if you've made it to the end of this video. Thank you for watching. If you've skipped to the end of the video, that's also okay. I'm sort of including, this is me after I've edited all of this stuff. So I've recorded this, done all the editing, stitched it all together, and I'm sitting down at the end of all of this to summarize the video essentially for you in about a 2-minute format. So what I did was I took Civilization 6 as a game engine and essentially automated it, observing as an indigenous perspective in order to compare it to this article, which I will link and put my source for right here. That's important to do. This is the article that we're thinking about. You should absolutely read it. And the gist of the article, to sum it down, is that taking indigenous tribes and putting them into games that are measured and evaluated through colonial power rankings, essentially. You win in Civilization if you can get a culture victory, a technological victory, a religious victory, or a military victory, which are all very colonially minded things. And the game sort of has a built-in mode to de-incentivize just hanging out by yourself away and sort of like growing and developing the land. And I think that by exploring what the machine does on its own when it's not a player that's making these decisions, an intelligent player responding to these things, I'm curious to see what the game testing this against itself is going to do to these indigenous, these fictional versions of these indigenous groups that they're digitizing and putting into this game. So essentially, I ran 2 simulations. The first game, or both games I should say, we played as the Aztecs. We use a real-world map, which is included in the base game for Civilization 6. And the first game, we only made it to turn 150 before the Americans, who spawned in directly to the north of us, who were already indigenous to the land at the start of the creation of this game. They were just there to start out. They had a small civilization there. They had a couple of people up there. And it was them and us on the entire continent. And essentially, they annexed us 150 turns in and absolutely destroyed us and took over the whole continent. So that simulation didn't last very long. The second one, we ran everything again, but we were the only group on the western continent of the Earth. Essentially, we were the only major civilization there. We had a city-state next to us. We had a barbarian tribe next to us. They were sort of spawning from a certain place over there. And we had 2 communities, one up north in Toronto. Those were that was the city-state. There was another one that was also right next to us. And then there was the barbarian groups. And if we sort of break it down like that, it took about, I want to say, the first like 300 or so turns to get to the point where X this last little bit out. It took about 300 turns or slightly over halfway through the game for us to get to the point where the other nations on the separate landmass from us, that would be Europe and the Western continents, took to get over here and land. Very quickly, the British showed up. They established their own colony and sort of moved down south. And we eventually got invaded by the French at the very end. And at the very end of that game, we had 2 of our major cities ransacked and essentially taken over, controlled by other civilizations through military power. We had the British took a city, and the French took a city. And at the very end of the game, we scored last in every metric. Because there's a couple key mechanics to focus on. The first one was that of technology sharing. So civilizations that are placed next to other civilizations will just develop quicker in this game in terms of science, and essentially it's population is the theory. Said if there's way more people over here populating and doing their thing when they're right next to other civilizations, then they were able to flourish. But us on the other continent, however, grew a little bit and continued to moderately expand and trade with our local partners, but didn't hit a big technological jump until other people started coming in. And by that point, we had essentially been ravaged by barbarians and by other people who were invading us, to the point that we weren't really able to do anything. And we ended the game last in every single category, but still alive and sort of getting leached off of. We had a few cities that were slowly growing at the very end, and we were sort of rebuilding, but definitely a lot looking more like a nation state than any sort of playable or anything close to winning. And I wanted to also say that a lot of this outcome might have to do with the difficulty that I was playing at. I set it to a normal difficulty for the first game and then bumped it up slightly for the second game. So in terms of variables, like if I were to run this again, which I'm not because this takes hours and hours, I probably watched about 4.5 to 5 hours of simulation and got to the end and had to edit this all together. So if you add all that up, it's probably about 6 hours of watching this AI do its thing. But I don't know. It was a thought experiment. It was an experiment. I tried it out. Those were my findings. Absolutely read the article. It's fantastic. But this is my short way of summing it up and saying thank you for watching. If you've just watched this last part, maybe go back, watch my post discussion if you just want to see me talking, or watch the whole thing, or honestly skim it, chuck it on your headphones. I feel like this would be a good experience like that. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this. Yeah, very cool just to be able to put this out on an online space like this. And I'm fully aware of my own bias as a white guy sitting on a computer talking about this shit. But hey, this is just my opinion. And you should go form your own opinion. But educate yourself first. Highly recommend the article. Fantastic read. So thank you very much. Hello, my name is Wesley, and welcome to I Play Civilization 6 for Homework? ? Today we are going to be doing a run-through of Civilization 6 through the lens of replaying Colonialism, which is a fantastic article by Marc Carpenter that essentially takes video games, historical real-time strategy video games like Civilization, and examines them from an Indigenous perspective, and asks what the pros and cons are of these like fictitious games and scenarios, and how these systems might reinforce ideas about colonization and reinforce narratives surrounding colonization, but also potentially on the flip side allow Indigenous groups to sort of recapture and regain this independence, and sort of rewrite history in a more fictional sense. So fantastic article. Today we're going to be playing, or rather I will say observing, a game of Civilization 6, which I've set up. Our perspective character, and I say perspective because we are not actually going to be making any of the decisions here, is Montezuma and the Aztec Empire. I have us set up at the very beginning of the game, and have purposely installed a mod which will essentially let us to run this whole game on autopilot. So as soon as I believe it's Control A for autoplay, or Shift A for autoplay, and we're off. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to let us observe in real time as our Aztec civilization
does its thing. So this is going to take quite a while, and I'm not planning to. Whoa, that's a lot. We're over to Europe, so I think I was told if I held Shift I can zoom around. So now we can just see what we want to see. So there's Europe. We don't really care about what they've got going on over there. We more or less care about what's going on over here. And it's going to take us a while for anything to really happen here. But here's our guy. Here's Montezuma. Our details for our specific character. But we don't really care because we're not going to be making any of the decisions here. So very slowly but surely, because the computer that I'm running on, I don't know if you can hear it with my microphone, but it's whirring very loudly, running this video recording software and this game at the exact same time. So essentially I want to examine, and I'm going to talk while this game plays out, I want to examine the inherent biases in this game, and this is, I'm only going to run this once, because A, this is a lot of electricity and computing power, and B, it's also going to be a lot of time for me to invest to just watch this whole entire thing. But I want to examine how the AI systems in here, or I'd say they're not quite AI systems. They're more like game-generated opponents. They're semi-intelligent, obviously, because they know how to play the game, etc., etc. But I'm curious how the systems in this game will affect the outcome of this particular simulation, and I'm curious to see how things end up, if this civilization will continue to prosper and make it to the end of the game. I don't know if we're going to win, but it would be curious to see how we are and how this game plays out sort of without any human involvement. My initial playthrough, I sat down and I played about the first 50 or so turns as the Aztecs, and very quickly I ran into the problem of my initial method was going to be to purely follow the decisions made by the computer. So every time the computer would suggest an action, I would take it, and when it would suggest multiple actions at the same time, I would simply select one of those at random and just go from there. The problem gets to when the computer stops giving you suggestions for things like civics, which are like technological progressions. So I essentially hit that point and said, okay, now I have to make the decisions. There's no suggestion and involvement as to what the computer is going to tell me to do, what the AI is going to tell me to do. So I have just gone a different route and said, hey, you're going to make all the decisions yourselves for everything. Now the game is already doing this already, controlling the other like NPCs in a solo player game. Obviously in a multiplayer game, this would be people online, and this would be happening over a matter of hours or even days. Civilization games tend to be quite long. As you can see, we're already on turn 20, and it's only been a couple of minutes here, but there's going to be a lot more stuff to do. So I'm essentially just going to leave this running in the background and sort of sit around and observe what this is. I might go away and come back and do a little bit of an update every once in a while. So looks like we've sort of established our main city here. There's a couple nation states that aren't too far away from us. South America looks pretty untouched. The Americans, of course, are right there. No Canadians in this game, sadly. But yeah, we'll come back and we'll check back in a bit. Okay, so checking back in here, it's been about 5 minutes since we've started the simulation. Our civilization has already formed their second city-state. Looks interesting. One thing I will notice, I think it's very interesting that in this default starting game, sort of playing with the exact number of players in the exact size in which this game already like comes with. Like this is a pre-made setting. The Americans are already here, and obviously that didn't happen in history in this way. The Americans didn't, in this scenario at least, are indigenous to this land, which I think is interesting. So I might see if I can't go through again and do a separate simulation, but purposely remove the Americans from the equation so we can perhaps see what a colonial invasion might look like when we have a civilization essentially expanding uncontested for a couple hundred or thousand years before we get to that point. But we'll check back in and see how things develop in a little bit. But I just thought that might be neat to point out. All right, we're about 3 minutes later. We've got an exciting update. The Americans have just declared war on the Aztecs, which is fascinating considering that this is what? We're like 40 turns in? Yeah, 50 turns in, and the Americans have already turned on us. I think that's fascinating. Our second city is very close to Washington, which is their capital. I can imagine that would be the point of contention. But it looks like they're going at it, and it looks like our city just got sacked in real time. You're watching me react to this, so that's interesting. I wonder if that stops there, or if this game might be over for us before it really begins. We're back with some good news, and that good news is that America has officially made peace with the Aztecs. They've founded their city of Charleston and are continued to expanding across the West Coast, where we are stuck with our single city and are surrounded by American forces. We're back. We've officially hit turn 100, which means we are a fifth of the way through the game. Things over here looking very American-centric. Looks like we've got a civilization. I guess this would be like northern Saskatchewan, Alberta, which is an interesting spot to found a civilization, saying as how our one other city is down here. Stuff's popping off in Europe, but that's not really of any concern to us. They're much further ahead than we are. But in terms of us, we've got the city of Teo. Yeah, I guess the Aztecs have decided to move north for colder climates, and we're dealing with some I guess Alaskan barbarians up there. Interesting to see how many U.S. troops have moved onto the western border. I bet you we don't control this territory for too much longer. But we've got our city down here. We've established trade routes, and it's almost time for Christ to be birthed. So that's about where we're at right now. We'll check back in a little bit. Okay, it's check-in time. Look at that. Just in time. As soon as I start recording, America has declared war on the Aztecs. I noticed all these ships in the water, and I noticed how large the American population is getting. And it looks like, it's 800 AD, turn 151. And we are getting invaded. I was just about to get to the point where I was thinking I might have to pause this game and go to sleep and just simulate the rest of this in the morning. But it looks like we're getting invaded, and it's gonna start right now. And if you look around, you'll see one Aztec spearman who just got killed. The Americans looks like they've got their catapults, they've got knights, they've got crossbowmen, and if you look around here, we have nobody. We've got a sovereign city-state that's right next to us. They've got some men-at-arms. I suppose we could levy their military, but I doubt that that's going to happen, actually. Oh, and look at that. There goes like half of our main city's health. Are we getting attacked up north, too? It doesn't look like it yet, but I'm sure it'll only be a matter of time. Yeah, interesting that it only took about 150 turns for the Americans to launch a full-scale invasion. That's worrying. I was just talking with my roommate, actually, about, I guess Chicago's not on here, but the Texas National Guard just moved into Chicago. So that's exciting. American Civil War, potentially upcoming here. But, yeah, as you'll see, we're going to watch our main city fall here in just a second. And I don't know if we just lose when that happens, if you take over the main city, or if that star will shift to our second largest city. We will continue to be invaded, or if the Americans will just let us be. But interesting to see that it really didn't take very long for the Americans to look south of the border and start to invade us, even in a non-colonial context. Of course, I think it's important to remember that the Americans here, yeah, look at that. Those are now U.S.-controlled territories. Cool. I guess this is our one safe hold up north here, in what looks to be about rural northern Saskatchewan / Alberta. Yeah, there's the Rockies. Yeah, this is probably like Edmonton, realistically. Cool. So, I guess there goes our ancient civilization. What, 2,000? No. This game starts in 4,000 BC, and now we are almost at, so about 5,000 years of history. Deleted and erased by the Americans. Interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Oh yeah, we're getting invaded here. This game's gonna be over in a matter of turns here. That's very interesting. I think given that the Americans started indigenous to this, like the starting landmass, we both started in the same space. I think I will do another simulation using this exact map, but instead removing the Americans. To begin with, to see how things might look different if we have our own continent to ourselves. Yeah, but look at that. There goes our city, and I think that's it. I think the game just stops here. There's nothing much else we can do. Is it just going to continue without us? India has made peace with Rome. Good for them. We're dead. And the Americans have conquered North America. Cool. Well, that was a lot quicker than I had anticipated. So I guess there's no more use doing this simulation. Yeah, I guess we'll run another one, because that was very quick. Okay, we are back. Today is day 2. We've got a new game loaded up here. We're going to try to play as Montezuma again. We've switched up the settings a little bit. We're playing with less players just so this takes slightly less time. We still have the true start location map selected, but this time I've gone through and I've purposely selected civilizations that were around and were in Europe and Asia during the time of the medieval era, which is where we're going to start this. Yeah, so we should start off with a decent setup already. So my goal here with this is to remove the Americans from the equation. They are no longer indigenous to North America because they weren't to begin with. So we, as Montezuma, should be the only society sort of on that western continent, and I'm curious to see how long it takes for that exploration to occur and to come over to where we are. We're going to start off with a good amount of technology, but I'm curious to see how things go. We're back. We've got this game all set up. We've got a number of starting resources, so we are just going to begin our automation now. Looks like this is the same size map as we had before. We are the only ones that are over here. Looks like we've got, some Canadians up north. I'm going to turn off this again, or Shift-I. We don't want the auto camera on. So, looks like we've got a city-state up north, which will be the Canadians, which is interesting. I'm going to take this as an interpretation of northern indigenous groups like Canadian civilizations, and I'm curious how long it takes for this game to devolve into us getting colonized and invaded. We've got a city-state to the left of us, or to the right of us here, little city-state down here to the south, but it looks like the majority of everything's going to be going on over in Europe there. We're at 640 AD. So I'm going to take a wild guess and say that around 1692, when Columbus sails the ocean blue, we're going to get colonized is going to be my prediction here. But I am hoping and I'm thinking that we're going to hopefully get to stick around for a little bit longer this time. So already we've lived almost up into and past the point where we got annihilated last game. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll check back in a little bit. Okay, it hasn't been very long since our last check-in, but I just want to go over, where we've just hit about 166 turns in, so almost a quarter of the way through here totally, and I just wanted to take this moment to talk about city-states and barbarians, which in Civilization 6 are the aggressive and non-aggressive sort of indigenous built-in game representations. So barbarians spawn typically at the beginning of the game, and they'll fight you. They'll try to invade you. They will be hostile. Versus these city-states who have their own, they've got their own colors, they've got their own cultures, they've got their own, usually one singular city. They'll farm their own resources, they'll create their own troops, and you can trade with them. You can create delegations with them, but you can also attack them, invade them, and levy their militaries, but they are meant to be sort of neutral territories, whereas the barbarians are on the more aggressive end of things. The barbarians disappear when you blow up their villages. They look something like this up here. When you attack these guys and you destroy their village, you take it over, they'll essentially just disappear. They don't really give you any resources or anything, versus the city-states, which you can send envoys to and create trade routes with. So we've got a great... I don't think this mode will let me click on the city-state itself to show the info about it because we're in autoplay mode. But we've built a nice little relationship here with the city of La Venta. And I'm going to guess up north we will eventually establish some sort of trade route with the city of Toronto. These are randomly generated. There's a large section of them. There's another one that I was going to look at over here. Yeah, this is the nation-state of Madol, and they're in the middle of the ocean, and they're just hanging out, and they haven't interacted with absolutely anybody yet. There's Brunei. They're not player-controlled, so when you're playing a multiplayer game, there will be a number of these that'll just be there. They pop up, and it's very encouraged that you are trading with them and becoming non-hostile with them. But looks like the Germans have taken over the North Pole. or have started to settle the North Pole. We still haven't had any ships cross the Atlantic, or the Pacific for that matter. I think I can just go over this way. Japan's got their seafaring military at this point, but we really haven't had any contact yet. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk about how they're sort of represented, with the city-states and the barbarians. But we'll check back in, hopefully, once we've got a little bit more action / colonization going on here. Okay, we're back. We've just crossed turn 200, and we are close to the encroaching 1492, the year when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. We still have not been contacted by Europe. Nothing's really happening in South America. There's a bunch of barbarians down there. There's a little city-state down there. It looks like Europe is still expanding. They're at war with each other. The Spanish have sort of really started to take over Africa. Actually, everybody's taken over Africa. There's the British, there's the Spanish, a little bit of French presence over there. Australia, still uninhabited. And that's about where we're at. China is continuing to expand. There we go. We've hit 1,500. And we still have not been contacted. We've still not established a trade route with Toronto, which I find surprising. But we've got a very nice little partnership going on with the city-state of La Venta here. This is definitely a change from the last game, where we made it about 150 turns in before getting blown up by the Americans. This is very nice. I think this is going well for us so far. I think it'll only be a matter of time before the Europeans essentially discover how to travel in the deep sea, which is this dark blue territory. That's an achievement that you have to unlock. It's a technological advancement. And my guess is that as soon as we get there, we are gonna see an invasion. Yeah, that's my assumption. Africa has essentially almost fully been colonized at this point, and more or less everywhere else as well. Interior Asia also looking similarly contested, but yeah, I'll be curious to see how this goes, and I guess I'll wait, and our next check-in will probably be once we have contact, but I'm guessing it's going to be another about 100 turns or so, but we'll see. We're checking in once again. It's 1700 AD. Everybody's declared war on Russia, and we are still alone. It's us, Toronto, La Venta, and the barbarians on the western continent, which is not how I thought that this was going to go. I think that it's very curious that we have not expanded beyond 2 cities, whereas we look over to the cluster cusp that is Europe right now. There's Spain. Look at all those religious emissaries. That's another aspect of this game that I attempted to figure out at one point, but couldn't because it was too complicated, is the aspect of religious warfare. Looks like Russia's trying to spread Eastern Orthodoxy across Europe. One of the many ways you can win this game is the religious victory, which is not something that we seem to be caring about. Oh, and looks like we've just founded our second city, which is interesting that it took us this long to do that. But I guess that this whole continent is essentially ours. We don't have anything in the bottom. And it looks like we've got some French scouts in Southern America, and I bet you it's only a matter of time before we see this up north here as well. I'm going to exit autoplay mode for a second here just so we can check in on the scores. We're looking pretty low comparatively to everybody else, which I think is very interesting. We have no military because we haven't had to have one. for the most part, we've just been fighting barbarians, which is interesting to see. And it looks like the only other civilization that we've, looks like they've denounced us. So I think we're going to be going to war fairly shortly with England. And interesting considering that we have no military. Okay, let's turn this back on. We'll go back into autoplay, and let's see how this unfolds. I think that that's very interesting. Oh, look, somebody's made peace with Russia. I guess they're no longer getting attacked. These look like the English. We've got English scouts over there. And looks like the barbarians have line infantry now, which is interesting. Okay, we'll check back in a little bit, and we'll see if the British are just coming to say hello or if they're coming to invade us. We're back, and the British are officially here. They've founded the colony of Sheffield on the east coast. They've got their red coats now. It is 1820 AD, and we are a little over halfway through this simulation. We've had a bit of a barbarian problem over here on the west coast. Oh, and look at that. We've just founded our third city, which is very interesting to see. South America, still absolutely nothing going on. Nobody's come over here yet. Oh, look, it's the British. They're coming. And it looks like they're heading towards South America. But they've already made it across the pond, so to speak. Things in Europe do not really concern us. This map kind of sucks to zoom around. But everybody's still going at it here. Expansionism at its finest. Look at that. Interesting. Still haven't gotten to Australia. And we are slowly but surely expanding, but dealing with a growing force of barbarians on the west coast. Okay, we're going to come out of autoplay for a second so we can see our stats, if it'll let us do that. Shift A is supposed to do that for me. They should pop up right here in this right-hand corner. Yeah, okay, well, we are very far behind. We've got a decent faith base, not a lot of money. We are behind culturally and technologically. Of course, in your solo view, you only get to see the statistics from the other civilizations that you've run into. Doing a little bit of a check-in here. Looks like we are a little bit behind development-wise, probably because everybody over there has been sharing technology with each other. Which is not a thing that we've had access to over here. And in terms of culture, looks like we are more or less on the same path. We're a little bit behind where the British are at. They're up over here. In terms of our government, looks like we've selected an autocracy. We have a religion. We are working towards a religion, supposedly. In terms of world religions, we have the Eastern Orthodoxy, Catholicism, and in terms of great people, I wonder if we got any great people. No, we are far behind in almost every other category, which is very interesting to consider. We still have no military, despite, I don't know, all of these barbarians on the west coast. But there's Sheffield. Okay, so we're going to go back into autoplay, and I'm curious to see how this continues to go. It would be very interesting to see us wiped out by barbarians before we even get to the point of colonial invasion. Obviously, we've got the city of Sheffield over here. Yeah, interesting to see. We'll check back in a bit. We've officially had foreign troops land in Southern America. We've got the British, we've got the French, and way down south we've got the Russians. Up north, however, we are starting to see these barbarians just continually keep ransacking us. We've finally built a military unit who looks like we just got destroyed. But But we haven't really been able to progress because we just keep getting sacked by these barbarians over here. Which is interesting. The British have continued to build out Sheffield. Nobody else has landed in North or Middle America. The barbarian settlers continue to fight, and still nobody's managed to... Oh, look at that. Speak of the devil. The Russians have established their first city. It is 1888 AD. And look, there's the French in South America. So my prediction, if I had to make one, is that it's only going to be a matter of time before the British over here expand west. I am thinking that there may be... Whoops. What does that mean? Oh, they're giving us gifts. How nice. Not like that's ever gone poorly for indigenous civilizations before. Okay, sure, the British are giving us stuff, which I guess is nice. Maybe they will help us get rid of some of these barbarians. Anyway, looks like South America is finally starting to be colonized. Over here you can see the entirety of Africa has mostly been taken over by the Spanish, sects of the French, a little bit of British presence as well, but for the most part it looks like to be Spanish endeavor. Up north, Russia's got their hands in a lot of pies. India's staying quite neutral in the middle. Asia's got their own thing going on. Large clusters of barbarians. Looks like China has helicopters already. That's interesting to see that they have progressed that far. And I bet you if we turn off autoplay and we get to see the stats of the other civs up in this top right hand corner, if it'll show us silent mode, not silent mode. We want autoplay. Turn it off. Yeah, we are far, far, far behind in every other measure of success. This might be an interesting thing to look at once it pops us into our own. This is our self-controlled view. This is fully out of autoplay. We look at the world rankings. We are second to last in religious. We are second to last in domination with a military strength of 0. We are dead last in culture. And we are dead last in the science victory. So we've got 30 technologies. China has double the amount of progress that we have, obviously, seeing as how they have helicopters in 1888. Again, this is a game, right? All of these things are based on metrics that the game is coming up with. But very, very interesting to look at. I think it looks like the Russians are in the lead currently. Unmet civilization, the Russians. We haven't encountered the Russians yet, nor have we begun to do really any exploration of Southern America. Our cities seem to be consistently under attack by these barbarians who are all in this area, and I'm going to go back into autoplay mode now. But interesting to see that check-in. Yeah, we're pretty far behind, and I'm 100% sure that we are not winning this game at this point. The question is if we are alive when we make it to turn 500. So I think we've reached about turn 350 last I checked. Yeah, turn 323. So over the halfway point at this stage. Yeah, very curious to see where this goes. We'll check back in a little bit. The British have continued to expand. They've got another city, the city of Portsmouth. The barbarians have continued to ravage us. And it looks like the British are coming. We've got the Redcoats on the East Coast. Southern America has been taken over by the French. They've got the city of Liverpool down there as well. Look at that. Fertility rights. Interesting. Looks like the Spanish have tanks and machine guns in South America. And the British are still stuck with field cannons. Glad to see that there are other forces that are fighting some of these barbarians for us, but we still have not had a chance to rebuild. The AI has chose not to rebuild our production facilities, which has really stunted our growth here. And I'm sure if we turn this off, we are in last by a wide margin. The Russians look to be winning this game, but if we look at our world rankings and such, well, it's going to take a second to buffer for us. If I had to put money on it, I would say that we're getting invaded by the British fairly shortly here. Looks like our relationships with pretty much everybody aren't looking too good. Oh, looks like we're... Oh, never mind. That's the English are at war with the Indians. And we've been denounced by a lot of people. I don't know why. We haven't done very much. Looks like we are slowly but surely producing some military to help protect ourselves. But that's worrying. Let's go back and let's see how long this lasts for. We are currently turned 356, and we have almost reached the 2000s. So let's get back into this here. And let's see how long until we get invaded. Checking in once again. We've almost reached the year 2000. Look at that. 1956 turned 377. North America is looking a little different last time we saw it. The British now have 3 major cities, including also the Chinese have a city up in northern Alaska, I guess. They also have helicopters and have had them for the last 400 years, which is worrying. I thought we were going to get invaded by the British fairly shortly, but they've actually decided to move west and help fight a lot of these barbarians along the coast. South America is still looking like it's being rapidly expanded into. Couple major groups fighting for control over there. Still a lot of barbarians. All of Africa has been colonized, of course, at this point. Lonely Australia. Oh, never mind. Look at that. There's the Chinese with their tanks and their helicopters. We've also started to see the influence of Russian Eastern Orthodoxy. Some of their missionaries made their way over and started spreading their religion over here, which is another very confusing aspect of this game. And looks like we've got the Spanish city of Bilbao on our southern border. I'm very curious to see, now that we've finally founded our 5th city, how long it takes for us to get invaded here, now that we've more or less gotten rid of most of the barbarian problems over here on the west coast, with the aid of the British. Still in our territory, as you can see, a lot of our productions over here have been pillaged. So we need to, hopefully the game will realize that we can build some builders. Look at these guys who will come along and fix our stuff up for us so we can continue producing things. But we are significantly behind at this point. Curious to see how long it takes before we get invaded, or if that's a thing that even happens. The technology of people surrounding us. Toronto's got machine guns, tanks. The British also looks like they have mechanized infantry. We had a knight at one point, but I think he got blown up. And if we look down here to the south, the Spains have, look at that, machine guns and tanks and stuff. So I only think it's a matter of time before we get invaded and taken over. But I will be very curious to see if that will happen in the last, looks like about 120 turns of this game. It's been a little while since we've last checked in. We've now reached turn 422 in the year 2001. So, eking up on my birthday here, our civilization has sort of flourished with the assistance of the British, who have managed to drive out a lot of the barbarians. The Chinese have taken over the northwest coast here. But I'm still slightly concerned that there may be a potential British invasion incoming. Or potentially with the Spanish from the south. Look at all those machine guns. That's worrying. So it's 2003, the year I was born. And in their imagined future, looks like the Aztecs are doing quite well for themselves. But if we do take ourselves out of autoplay mode, we will see that we are handily, significantly behind in terms of everything except for the religious victory. It looks like, oh, never mind, that's the faith balance. So we are far behind every other civilization in essentially every metric that counts. We have no military. We have the lowest overall score. And in terms of world rankings, we are last in every category except for the religious victory. Interesting. I am curious to see if we get invaded in the last, 80 turns of this game in order to push one of these civilizations over the top. But I am going to make a guess that going to war with us would not be worth it at this point. Because everybody else is already so far ahead. But if we do see an invasion, I'm guessing it's going to be the Spanish coming in from the south. They'll probably blow up. Whoops, that's interesting. The British keep on giving us stuff. I think we have a chance of surviving to the end of the game. Maybe we will be severely hobbled. But yeah, just interesting to check in and see. Okay, I was just about to leave to go get groceries, but I figured I would do one more check-in. I think the invasion is coming. Oh, look at that. It's the British. They're in our territory. They've got settlers, they've got builders, they've got military engineers, they've got mechanized infantry, and it looks like they've got a jet bomber. So, chat, I think we might be cooked here, potentially. Oh, look at that. It's the British. The British are coming. Let's go out of automation mode and let's see if they are officially at war with us. It's going to take a second for all this to go through. But I worry about the happiness of our citizens. Yeah, me too. We're about to get invaded. Doesn't look like we are currently at war with anybody, which is good. But we have, or that's the wrong thing. Looks like the British are at war with India, but not us yet. Not yet, which is good to see. But, yeah, we're so far behind in every metric that I don't think winning this game is possible. I think the goal at this point will be survival and the endurance of our nation. But even that is dubious. So we're 2023, 2 years away from modern day. We've got about 50 turns to go. And yeah, curious to see how this wraps up. Okay, so this is probably going to be the last check-in before the end of this game. We're essentially getting occupied by the French. They've got helicopters, they've got tanks, they've got artillery. Looks like we're about to get invaded. Congratulations to Russia, who just finished constructing a wonder. I wonder what it is, and I wonder if we're going to make it to the end of this game. Turn 469, it is 2034, and things don't look so good, because the French are here, and they have helicopters, and we definitely don't, and we're still trying to build settlers, which is interesting, I guess. I don't know where these French are coming from. I guess they're coming from South America. Looks like they've got the ability to build airplanes as well. So yeah, this doesn't look too good. Oh, and look at that. Speaking of invasion, we just got taken over. That's our city. And I bet you the rest of this disappears in short Short form. So, yeah, I don't think we make it to the end of this game, which is unfortunate because I had hope that by being, oh, look, they've made peace with France. Cool, they just invaded us to take like a singular city. Sure, and they're going to stop there because, of course. That's interesting, though, that they would just choose to come in and hostily take over there. And I wonder if somebody else takes a similar approach, or if the French just say, "Oh yeah, we've made peace," and of course everybody's going to go to war with each other now because there's like 30 turns left in this game. China's going to war with India. Yeah, 25 turns left. That's our first invasion so far. But I'd be curious to see if we're still around by the end of this game. Okay, we'll check in once everything's done. Okay, so we've essentially reached the end of this game. There are 10 turns left, which means it's time for me to look back and reflect. You'll notice that this is in a different section. Hopefully, hello. We have 10 turns remaining in this simulation, which means it's wrap-up time. So I'm going to talk while footage of this plays as I can react to this in real time. Our civilization is very far behind everybody else in this game due to not only the separation, geographical separation, and not tech sharing with the other civilizations around us. First of all, due to the isolation. Second of all, our civilization has been ravaged by barbarians on the west coast, who are all gone now because they've been wiped out by the colonial forces that have come into this continent and built their own military. We were able to establish a very healthy trade partnership with this city-state right here, Leventa, and build a number of civilizations up north as well, or I should say cities up north. You can see all of South America has been conquered at this point, and that is the same for North America. I don't believe that there's space on this board that is unoccupied. The French came in, I don't know, about 20, 30 turns ago, and just did a hostile takeover of our main city in southern United States. And while we're not losing this game, we essentially are not winning. That's an interesting way to put it. Oh, and look, France has just decided to go to war on us again, so maybe we don't survive until the end of this game. Yeah, you'll see that we are far, far, far behind everybody else. If we look at the world rankings, we are last in every single category, which is tough, and we are a significant chunk below the Germans, who are in last place overall. I'm curious as to whether that is to do with the difficulty setting or whether that is due to the gameplay choices that the AI and sort of automating this civilization has had. But we're going to go back into autoplay as I sort of wrap up these final thoughts. I think overall the points made in this article have continued to ring true in this experiment. As you can see us getting invaded in real time. Very interesting. If I was the one making all the decisions for the Aztecs in this game, first of all, this game would take multiple hours. Even just watching this simulation, like this particular iteration, has taken about 2.5 hours. It's about 1 o'clock now. I started this much earlier in the morning, and we get to the end and we're really just getting picked apart by people who are more technologically advanced than us. And I think it's very interesting that the AI chose to essentially not create military units and fight at all, because we didn't really have a need to, because we had all of this land to explore and to harvest, and we were only really attacked by barbarian civilizations. But I think more and more, and this simulation as opposed to the previous one, I think it's interesting to see the two ends of the spectrum of like PC neutral, that is non-playable states. So we have both the barbarians and also the city-states. The city-states being on the very helpful end of things, almost always non-violent. I don't think we got attacked at any point by the folks in Toronto or the people of the city of Naventa, but definitely got constantly ravaged by the barbarians. And I think, well, there is a mod that you can activate to specifically shut down and allow for more political sort of confrontation with the barbarians. The mass part of it is done through combat. And I mean, if we look over at Europe, we can see that the levels that the cities have reached over here are much, much, much higher than anything we were able to reach in our own civilization. And that's obviously due to a number of factors, but if you look around, our city has been ravaged. Our country has been blown up by military forces and barbarians, and we've been occupied. And while we were able to have, I don't know, a couple thousand years of peaceful existence, as soon as everybody shows up, the land gets divided, and we get taken over because we are technologically inferior. Which sort of checks out with the course of history, and I don't know, it would be interesting to run more simulations and see where this goes in the future. And we're past turn 500 now, so the game is technically over. As we can see, yeah, our capital city fall. So I'm going to end this simulation here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I might have another little clip on the end of this to sort of summarize my findings. I'm going to take a little break from watching this because I've been watching this for 2 hours. Look at that. We have a military now, but nowhere near as strong as anybody else. Yeah, I don't know. I've come out the other end of this match leaving quite depressed about the status and the possibilities. And well, I do certainly believe that there's a possibility for indigenous civilizations to find victory. I certainly haven't seen it here. Like, game one, we got blown out by the Americans. We got absolutely ravaged. Didn't even make it to turn 200. And here we essentially just sat around until the very end of the game before we got harvested for the little resources that we were able to accumulate. And technologically, we are very far behind any other civilization. A lot of people are at war with us. A lot of people have denounced us. Oh, good for us. At least we have allied with India. But that doesn't mean much at this point because, as you can see, our civilization has been ravaged. Yeah, so thank you for watching this brief experiment, and perhaps I'll do a little wrap-up as soon as I return with some closing thoughts and reflections on this. But this concludes the simulation part of the video.
Well, that went about the way I was expecting it to go. I will say, as somebody who's played, Steam told me, about 50 hours of Civilization by this point. I'm not very good at the game. I don't like the game very much. I had to get it initially for a university class I took about the examining history through video games, and with that having been my introduction to the game of Civ 6 and having played some solo, played some online, and now having experience just watching and observing fully simulated games. For this assignment, I will say I observed about 4 hours of simulation across 2 different games, the first of which we began with the Americans on the continent to start off with, and our civilization made it to about turn 150 before we were essentially annexed by the Americans, and could no longer play as our civilization did not exist any longer. And the second simulation saw us on the Western continent essentially by ourselves. But very quickly you could see that through what I'm going to attribute to not just tech sharing. There's a mechanic based in the game that allows civilizations to share technologies with each other and resources. So if sort of one civilization invents pottery, the civilizations around them will get a small boost towards developing said technologies, as it would be in the real world. The only problem with that, of course, is when we have a sort of isolated environment on a continent and a body of land by ourselves, we don't really have neighbors to help with that. And the neighbors that we do have in Civilization 6 fall into one of two categories, and those are the nation states or the barbarians. And the barbarians essentially are just going to attack you. They're not going to provide anything valuable in the base game. There's a mod that allows for some sort of more diplomatic relations with them. That is to say that you just don't have to fight and kill them, and they're not going to come up to you and start killing you immediately. But it is interesting to note that that is a thing that you have to toggle, and it is not included in the base game. On the other hand are the city-states, who exist, but really only are there to be extracted from. You can trade with them, which is helpful for both of you. You can send envoys, which I don't think we got to at either point in either of the games. You can also levy their militaries. You can pay them to steal their troops if you would need. And, well, we did have a number of those in our second simulation. We had Toronto up north, and then another city just to the east of us. And those civilizations, or those cities, I should say, did end up sticking around till the end of the game. They weren't very useful, and they didn't do very much because those not being like PC controlled, like playable characters, they're just a feature of the game. They sit there and sort of interact with you to the level that you want to interact with them, versus other civilizations which sort of have those tech trees. We didn't gain any sort of boost from them, so in our second game what we saw happening was essentially rapid expansionism in Europe. We're doing our own thing over here. I do think that it was interesting to note that the AI chose not to expand all over North and South America. We chose to stay very centralized and to not focus on expanding our borders as much as I might have if I was a player controlling this, which is why I wanted to simulate this rather than play this. Also, playing this game would have probably taken me about 10 hours of playtime to play both this one and the other one, not to mention a lot more clicking. So automating everything and leaving it up to the AI yielded some interesting results, which in the second game led to first the British and then the Spanish and the French coming over to the so-called Western world, establishing colonies, and eventually annexing and taking us over, but not destroying us completely, even though they absolutely could have. But essentially, we finished last in every measurable category in the second game, and survived to the end, although being far behind technologically, being far behind in terms of religion and culture as well, we essentially got left in the dust by the expansionists. And I thought that it was additionally very interesting that as the Aztecs, the AI chose not to invest in military units at any point to defend ourselves from barbarians, to defend ourselves from invaders, which is potentially something I would have done a little bit differently, and just focus on resource management. Of course, there are many and many decisions in Civilization, which is part of the reason why it doesn't quite appeal to me. I find that there are too many decisions, and there's so many levels of complexity. But in every marker of success, we failed to achieve it in both games. First, by being annexed completely by the Americans, and second of all, just being technologically and culturally outpaced by the other civilizations in our second simulation. So, overall, to sum things up, my stance on the article, I think after this experience, has leaned more towards the fetishization of including these groups. I think it is important to note that the Aztec civilization is an expansion pack. It is not initially included in the base game. And while I did purchase this game on Steam and it came with the Aztecs as an expansion pack for free, I think it's interesting to note that they're not part of the base game. And there are more expansions which will add additional indigenous civilizations into the game, but not included initially, which I think says a lot. And obviously the point of the article is to say that all of the measures of success that are all the things that they keep track of and things that they value are very, very militarily focused. It's all about expansion and it's all about power, and not so much staying home. And the game mechanics de-incentivize isolationism, which is a very colonial mindset. I do see why that is important to the game. They want to encourage interaction with other civilizations. They want you to interact with other players, other non-player characters on the board. But in this situation, trying to model a real-world scenario where we're trying to imagine an indigenous future, it doesn't really set itself up for success. And there's not a lot of room to explore those possibilities because this game is hard. And maybe this simulation would have gone very differently if I were to run this on the easiest setting rather than on a medium or slightly more difficulty setting as I did here. It's interesting, and I think my stance has become a lot more that these are very colonial-based games. Like if we examine the history of the genre, it comes from wargaming, which in and of itself can be its own genre of problematic narratives that it's creating. And I think that the war mechanic, the foundations that this game is built upon, the war gaming foundation that Civ 6 is built upon, really doesn't incentivize or promote, or at the very least makes it extremely difficult to imagine those indigenous futures. That's about all I had to say. I hope you enjoyed this video exploration. Shout out to you if you watched the whole thing. Probably the only person that's going to watch the whole thing is me. But thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. I certainly have. And I'm looking forward to probably not playing the game Civilization 6 ever again. So thank you very much for your time, and Godspeed.